Welcome to the Hebrew Point of View. We are going to dive straight into our next section, and that is we are talking about the Lucifer Myth, and we are talking about the Greek Septuagint, aren't we?
Right.
Yeah.
If you have just joined this series, we do have a previous one dealing with the Masoretic text. We said the development of this or the interpretation of this scripture in Isaiah chapter 14 verse 12 starts with the Masoretic text. Then it goes on to the Greek Septuagint, and then finally to the Latin Vulgate. We're going to look at all three translations side by side and compare the translation of this phrase, Helel ben Shachar, translated in the Masoretic text as bright shining son of the morning. Just one more time, I want Gail to read verse 12 for us.
So this is chapter 14 verse 12. How are you fallen from heaven, O light bringer and day star, son of the morning? How you are cut down to the ground, you who weakened and laid prostrate the nations.
Okay, stop right there. The most important part is verse 12. And we see there the Amplified Bible that Gail was reading from actually combines the translation from the Masoretic text and the Greek Septuagint. So let's have a look at the Greek Septuagint. What is it? What is the Greek Septuagint?
Yeah.
We found out what the Masoretic text was. It was the Hebrew text that was translated and written down by the Masoretes, the Jewish Masoretes. But what is the Septuagint? So after the Persian Empire collapsed, we have the arrival on the world scene of Alexander the Great. He led this great Greek army and spread Hellenism throughout the known world and the ancient Near East. He moved into Babylon and he took over Babylon, but he controlled the whole of the ancient Near East. And the world then became Greek. Very important. Now, in one of our previous sessions, we explained to you that when Cyrus the Great set the Jewish exiles free from Babylon, they did not all return to Jerusalem. Many stayed in Babylon. And through the centuries that follow, many of those Jews moved to other parts of the world. When I talk about the world, I'm talking about the known world at that point in time, which was really the ancient Near East. Many of them moved around and moved to other places, but not back to Judea. And there was a large community of Jews who left Babylon and moved into Alexandria in Egypt. What did they do there? They were just plying their trade. Remember, they had risen to the status of tradesmen and intellectuals during the Neo-Babylonian Empire and under the Babylonian rule. And these Jews now began to spread throughout the known world. Wherever they went, they were now subject to Greek influences and began to speak Greek as their language of the day. That was their common language. They began to speak Greek. Many of the Hebrew-speaking Jews lost the ability to speak and understand Hebrew, or didn't have that kind of versatility and that knowledge of Hebrew to be able to interpret the scriptures. The Jewish gatherings began to use the Greek language as their language of the service and their meetings.
So didn't it change their whole culture?
It changed the culture. It changed it to a Hellenistic culture, which we dealt with that, the influences of the Greek philosophy.
Yeah.
But this is a huge change. And so we have these groups of Greek-speaking Jews who need their biblical text, the text of Torah, in an understandable language.
So the Jewish people were totally assimilated into the Greek way of living.
Right, into the whole Greek way of living, the Greek mindset.
I mean, that's a huge shift for them, isn't it?
It is, but the most important thing is they began speaking the Greek language.
Wow, that's interesting.
And so there was a need for the translation of Torah from Hebrew to Greek to be used by these Jews in their religious services.
So they could read now this new language which they have, and they can now relate it to the scriptures in that.
Well, to many of them, it wasn't a new language. They were born into the language of Greek, and that's what they spoke.
Yeah.
Just remember, we're talking about hundreds of years passing here.
That's true. We forget about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we have this need for a Greek translation. Now, tradition says this. They chose 70 Hebrew scholars. It was actually, if you go into the history of it, 72, 6 from each of the tribes of Israel. And these scholars sat down to translate the scriptures from Hebrew into Greek. Now, the tradition says this, and I believe this is more tradition than actual fact, but says that each of these scholars sat down in a separate place, translated the scriptures. When they compared their translations, they were all identical. So that's the tradition that's behind this. Like I said, most scholars believe that is more tradition than fact. However, what is important is they produced a Greek version of the Torah. And why is this important? It's important because this is the first time that this biblical text is being translated into a different language. And we know today, as we look back from the 21st century, that this biblical text has been translated into hundreds of languages.
Yeah.
And hundreds of versions in each language.
Yeah.
By hundreds of translators.
Each with a different background.
Each with a different interpretation and a different context they're writing from. So what's important here is this is the first time that this Hebrew text is translated into Greek.
When are we talking now?
We're talking like 286, but somewhere in the 3rd century.
Sure.
It was the time of Alexander the Great, the ruling pharaoh in Egypt at that point in time was Ptolemy II. And here's a very interesting fact, quite apart from what we're talking about. Ptolemy II was the brother of Ptolemy I. And Ptolemy I was one of Alexander the Great's generals. So he was the first ruler, and Ptolemy II was the second ruler. And Ptolemy II said, in my library in Alexandria, I want a copy of every important literary work that exists. And so legend has it that he commissioned the translation of the Hebrew text into Greek to go into the library at Alexandria. So some information that maybe you didn't know.
No,
it's important to trace the historical development of this biblical text, because it's so important, because every time it's translated, the translators interpret the scriptures in their language. Now, what's the difference between Greek and Hebrew? Hebrew is a practical language. Greek is philosophical. So there are certain expressions in Hebrew, certain ways of saying things that cannot directly be translated. So
definitely,
people will tell you that the Greek translation is horrible Greek. Why do they say that? Because they are trying to interpret Hebrew idioms and Hebrew phrases into another language in which there are no words to do that. We come from a country where Afrikaans is a language that is spoken. We are English speaking, and we speak both languages, but there's certain phrases, certain sayings in Afrikaans that we cannot translate into English.
It just doesn't mean the same thing.
It doesn't. So if you are South African, you just use the Afrikaans expression. Just like there are certain English expressions that can't be translated into Afrikaans. And if you're Afrikaans or a South African Afrikaner, you will sometimes just use the English expression. as part of your word. And that's just known as the South African language.
Totally
it's accepted, understood. Well, here we have the Greek being translated out of Hebrew, and there were certain things that they could not translate.
Yeah.
What is important to our study, however, is that when it came to Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12, these translators got it right. I want to say something else about these 72 scholars that were chosen to translate the scriptures. They were far closer to the original text and the original context in which it was written. They understood the prophets in a far greater and more accurate way than translators today understand and can accept it and can interpret it. They were far closer to the language and the context. They were right there.
Yeah.
So their translation of the Hebrew into Greek was as close as you could get to the original context.
Yeah.
Important to understand this.
Yeah.
Later translations, like the Latin Vulgate in the 4th century, are not as close to the source. They're not as close to the language. These Hebrew scholars spoke both Hebrew and Greek, and they did a job of translating into the Greek, which is called the Septuagint, just named after 70. The Greek word 70, Septuagint. It's the translation written by the 70 scholars. Actually 72, as we've said.
Yeah. So these were definitely Greek scholars, right?
They were Hebrew scholars who spoke Greek.
But but I mean, basically they were
Hebrew scholars who were Greek scholars as well.
Okay.
We don't know.
So they would have had some background and context of their roots,
Oh, absolutely.
which would have influenced their writing.
They would have had, let's say they would have had a far greater understanding of the context of their roots than later scholars had.
Yeah.
The further you get from the source, the further you get from the context and the understanding, and the more you are influenced by subsequent translations and interpretations. And the context of the world changes with history. 100 years in history doesn't seem a long time, but 100 years in the life of a person and in the development of context and of content and of sciences and of knowledge is it's
huge.
Massive.
Yeah.
100 years is a long time. Well, I mean,
It's totally
imagine in your lifetime how knowledge has increased from when you first realized what things were until now. And we're not even 100 years old.
No.
Okay?
I mean, you're talking about 100 years. What about 10 years? I mean, it changes so quickly now. I mean, even 10 years.
Think about what's happened in our lifetime in the last 20 years.
Yeah, it's enormous.
Drastic changes.
Yeah.
New concepts, new phrases, new words, new understanding of words.
It's basically a new world.
That
Can't even recognize it.
we understand words in a different way today as we did 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
When we were growing up, we didn't have any idea of what our kids are growing up with today.
Yeah, nothing.
And so it's going to grow, and so it's going to change. So what I'm trying to say here is that history changes things, changes context, changes interpretations, changes
mindsets.
worldviews.
Yeah.
And new dynasties change things as much, moving from the Persian dynasty into the Greeks, and from the Greeks into the Romans. These brought about big changes. Not only changes in the people around them and the languages they spoke, but in their understanding and in the influences of each of those cultures and those dynasties, the influence it had on the interpreters of Scripture and the translators of Scripture. And that's what's important to us.
And it's very important, actually, because that changes everything.
Right. So what was the Greek translation of Helel ben Shachar? The Greek word that they used to translate that phrase was the Greek word heosphoros. Heosphoros was a Greek word that is used to describe the planet Venus, so it measures up against the Hebrew translation. It is also a word that means son of the morning. So remember I said to you that the Amplified Bible has got the Masoretic translation and the Greek. They talk about son of the morning. Heosphoros means son of the morning or dawn bringer. The one that
Light
brings
bringer,
the dawn, the light bringer. So we see the Greek translation totally in line with the Hebrew translation, which is translated by scholars close to the source.
Yeah.
There is no mention of a Satan, a Lucifer, or a devil. It is never used as a proper noun.
Yeah.
Heosphoros is used in other Greek texts, but never as a proper noun. It is always a common noun, a descriptive noun, or an adjective or an adjectival phrase, to be correct.
You say this
that describes something, and it normally describes this planet Venus arising.
Yeah, you say this term was the common Greek designation for the planet Venus when it appeared as the morning star.
There we go.
Before sunrise,
Yeah, so this was the common Greek designation for the planet Venus. So the point we're making here is that the Greek translation is very close to, if not identical to, the Hebrew translation of this verse. How art thou fallen, O Heosphoros, O dawn bringer, Venus.
Morning star.
And the connotations there are the same, of a king exalting himself to brilliance, just like the morning star does, only to be overpowered and cast down by the rising sun. The apt and most beautiful metaphor that Isaiah could have chosen to describe the fall of a human king. And I'm emphasizing this is an historical event, still an historical event, never has any other interpretive value other than the fact that he's talking about this king, this Babylonian king, who rose like planet Venus and was destroyed by God because of his arrogance and his self-exaltation. God has brought him down.
You say here in Greek literature, Hesperus was not a fallen angel or an enemy of God. It was simply a celestial body that announced the coming of the dawn. That's
Right.
a nice definition.
Yes. It's in Greek, Heosphoros is never a name,
Yeah.
let alone a name of a supernatural, external, evil deity that opposes God.
Yeah.
So still, the emphasis here is that this concept of a Satan, an adversary to God and his plans and his actions here on earth, and his children here on earth, does not exist.
So the translators saw a poetic taunt directed against the king of Babylon, employing imagery drawn from the brilliance and apparent exaltation of the morning star, which rises majestically into the heavens, only to fade before the glory of the rising sun, which is what you just said now.
And you said something important there, so I want to just quickly make a quick reference back to our previous discussion of the Masoretic text and the Hebrew. In Hebrew, there's something called a marshal. It's a taunt against something or someone for some kind of arrogance, some kind of self-exaltation. This prophecy in Isaiah is considered in Hebrew to be a marshal, a taunt against the king of Babylon.
What does
And
it
the
mean?
way that kings, a taunt, it is almost a sarcastic,
Like you're taunting something, basically.
sarcasm directed at somebody for doing something that everybody can see is stupid, is arrogant, is self-exalting, and that person, or that king, cannot see it himself. So here Isaiah is he is using a marshal, a taunt against the king of Babylon. Back to the Greek Septuagint.
Okay, and also something I'd like to say here. Note the Greek word Hesperus appears elsewhere in Greek literature and was never understood as a proper name.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Never. It's used time and time again, never as a proper name.
Yeah.
Always.
It was always understood as morning star or whatever, fallen angel, not a fallen angel.
No, never a fallen angel.
Yeah.
There was no such concept as of a fallen angel yet.
Yeah.
So this fall from heaven, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Heosphoros, is referring not to a being, not to an evil being, but to the planet Venus and to this king of Babylon. Remember, it's a translation directly of the Hebrew text. They understood what the connotations were. They knew who Isaiah was referring to, and so they just transferred that over into Greek. So here in the Septuagint, we have that same translation, that same interpretation of Helel ben Shachar as Heosphoros.
Interesting. Very interesting.
So we need to look at the Latin Vulgate next. So in our next session, folks, we are going to go and take a look at the Latin Vulgate, because this is where the whole thing turns. So don't miss it. The next part is more important than these first two discussions put together.
Yeah. All right. Great.
Well, thanks for joining us again, and we'll see you in the next segment.
And just as a matter of interest, if you do get this book, it's available on Amazon. It would be interesting to, if you've listened to this, to re-listen to it with the book, because it just gives you a little bit more depth than we can get to, because we can't go through everything yet. But I know from just talking about this and reading it, it really is a great source.
Yeah, and that's important what Gail just said. And just let me say this: some of this may be new to you, may be offensive to you, may be beyond your understanding right now. Don't condemn it.
Yeah.
In our discussions, we are unable to go into everything. I've written books. Our previous session, accuser to adversary to accuser, everything that we referenced there, everything we've spoken about there is in this book. The same as the Lucifer Myth. Everything we're talking about here, all the history, all the dates, all the facts, all the references are recorded in this book. If you're having problems with what I'm saying, get the book, go through it for yourself, make up your own mind. You decide what you want to believe and how you want to interpret these things that we're saying.
A lot of the problems that we have is that we don't know the history behind a lot of the stuff. And just as a point of interest too, Stuart wrote a book called The Star of Babylon, which is all about the King Cyrus and how he
Cyrus freeing the Jews
how he
from
freed
Babylon.
The Jews from Babylon,
From Babylonian exile.
But it goes into a lot of. What I love about it is it goes into a lot of historical events which I did not know existed, and I'm sure that a lot of us don't know that. So it gives you a great background even before you get to start reading some of this.
It's a novel. It reads easier. It's not a study book.
It's interesting.
So on to the Latin Vulgate. We'll see you in the next section.
God bless you.